Welcome to Your Family Dog, a podcast dedicated to helping families love living with dogs.
Hi, and welcome back to Your Family Dog. I'm Julie Fudge Smith, and I'm here, of course, with the superb and sublime and wonderful Tina Spring. And as per usual, we're talking away ahead of time. How's your day going? What's been happening? And so on and so forth. And we sort of stumbled into our topic of the day, like we usually do. So I don't know if this works really, but it works for us, so we're just going to go with it. So today,
I think it's an analogy that dog trainers use a lot, right? And that really applies to all parts of life, not just dog training.
what's that we stumble our way into?
That we stumble our way and kind of how this all comes to fruition.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, which was sort of the theme we were going to go with.
Yes.
Because Tina had asked me how things are going, and I said that I'm working on my new novel, had basically the first 2/3 done. And I've printed those 2/3 off because it's been a while since I read the beginning of it. Realizing that I needed some areas where I knew I needed to insert some characters earlier or in here, and I'd had an epiphany in the shower. And about
we're
what
all
I was
good. We're all good epiphanies.
Good epiphanies come
originate.
from, yeah. Right. And I actually was able to write it down before I forgot it. So that was also
wow. That's
yeah,
even better.
That's even better. But what I was saying is that so she asked me what the process was, and I said I was hoping to get the first draft, my first final draft, done by September, and then it would be off to the developmental editor, who will then look at it and go, yes, no, 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 yes, pretty good, plump this up, tone this down. That's a lovely sentence. I always look forward to that's a lovely sentence. But I trust her. She knows my writing. She likes my writing. She agree. She and I basically go with pretty much everything she says. So I trust her. But I was also saying that the other person I trust a lot with my writing is one of my writing partners, Brian. And I was saying to Tina that, like, for example, I can't think of a single time that Brian has steered me wrong, that he hasn't anticipated, like, I'll feel uncomfortable, like, okay, there's something off on this chapter, I can't nail it, and he'll nail it every time. But I'll never forget with this book, when I send him a series of chapters, he goes, wow, you've written the beginning. I'm like, I thought it was the 5th chapter. He goes, no, 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 you've written your way to the beginning. And I was like, really? And I looked, and he was absolutely right. I had written my way to the beginning. So all those other chapters, there's parts of them that I have pulled off and put into other chapters, but he's right. I had written my way to the beginning. And we're talking about how that is really how life works, how training works, how so many parts of our lives we muddle along until we sort of get ourselves to the starting point. And so not only in writing, but in training. And Tina made the analogy. Well, I'll let Tina make the analogy about the 2 dogs and what this means. But anyway, so that was our theme today, was that it's okay to stumble, that oftentimes it's the stumbling that brings us to the beginning of where we really want to be. So with that, Tina, your turn.
Well, what I was going to say is, in all things in life, right? Whether it's dog training or raising our kids or marriage or cleaning the house or even our own educations when we were kids, you start with learning letters, right? And then you put those letters together and form words, and on and on and on again until you've written the great novel, right? And that a part of that is editing, cleaning up what we're working on, or maybe even reordering it, going, okay, well, what I thought was chapter 1 is actually chapter 6, or what I thought was chapter 6 is actually the start, and I am gonna get rid of and not add those other 5 ahead. So I thought it was a really good way, a really good analogy for even how we raise our kids and dogs and how we're going to put that great novel together. So
Right.
you and I have both been through it, right? We've both had kids. We now both have grandkids. We both have dogs, a lot of them. We even have grand dogs, both of us. So
Yes. have grand dogs.
So when you think about teaching dogs their letters, like the behaviors that are very, very the beginnings of the structure that we need to start putting behavior together, what would you say um, is the first thing that you would be drawn to work on?
Sit. I find that sit as a default behavior is just really handy. So that if my dog doesn't know what to do, it's never going to hurt to probably put my bottom on the ground. And so I find sit to be a really nice default behavior, especially if you have large dogs. I found with our burner that he was a lot less intimidating to people if he was seated. And so we really worked on having Buckley learn, okay, if I meet somebody, I need to sit because I'm a big boy and I can be overwhelming if I move too much. The other one I would say is I really like Target. So that's a great way to, or touch, whatever you want to call it. I call it Target. Um, but touch can be the dog puts his nose on your hand. And I find that to be really handy to be able to guide my dog into and out of situations. So if we're out walking and there's a dog that I don't like the look of, I can have her target, 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 treat, target, 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 treat. I can turn her and have her target towards me. So it's a real simple little behavior that allows me to then add on more complex behaviors like turn and look at me. So I would say sit and target are probably two big ones for me. How about you?
Oh, so for me, it's eye contact. It's when you hear a
Good
name,
point.
orient toward me, right?
Yes.
So often when I'm working, actually, even with adult dogs living, especially adult dogs living with retirees or just adults, often the dogs don't know their names. They just know that if we're looking at them and talking to them, that means them,
Yeah.
right?
I
So
hadn't
so
really
I
thought
test
about
it.
that as I hadn't thought about that as a behavior. I mean, and maybe because I just do it so much with a dog and reinforce them looking at me, I don't think about that as teaching it as a behavior, but you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Right. Because I don't
Critical.
want their name to mean come. I want
Right.
their name to be stop what you're doing and look at me. That's it. That's like I'm just getting your attention. That's all. So that's where we that's where I start. Um and then I'm assessing like does the dog view me as safe or the environment as safe? So there's for me there's a lot of taking inventory of like does the dog does the puppy offer a sit, or in the case of being a foster parent, like I learned as a foster parent that we're all going to brush our teeth together and I'm going to go through all the steps, and I'm not going to assume that a child has been taught something until they show me they have the skill already. Many foster children came to me not really knowing basic hygiene stuff. And we're talking 9, 10-year-old kids who maybe don't know how to wash their hair or brush their teeth or how to bathe and rinse their hair. So we just practiced all those things. And it wasn't like, oh, drudgery. We have to do like it was, okay, we're all gonna brush our teeth together. It was a little bit like the Waltons, right? We're all standing in the big bathroom, brushing our teeth across two different sinks. And we're all doing it together with the timer for 2 minutes and changing, which side of our mouth we're working on first and, you know, making funny faces with toothpaste all over our faces. But I just don't, I assume competency. Like I assume that a dog knows their own mind. I assume that a child knows their own mind, but I don't assume that they know things until they show me that they actually know it.
That's a really good point. I like that. And it's funny how those little things, sometimes it's just, I think about one of my grandkids, it's really challenging to to get her to figure out how to really rinse her hair well, you know? It's one of those things is I think for some kids, this is a piece of cake. For other kids, it's not. So the idea of assuming that something that's easy for me is going to be easy for you, or something that's hard for me is going to be hard for you, it's not a reasonable assumption. I think it's really important to take a step back and assess, where are you at? What is it that we want to achieve, and where are we in the spectrum? Do we need to write our way to the beginning, or are we at the beginning and we can move forward? So I think that the idea of just sort of and goes back to some of the things we've talked about so many times, is really accepting and loving the dog you actually have, not the dog you think you have, not the dog you wish you had, not the dog you want to have, but who do you have right now? Because if you understand who you have right now, then you can start building those basics and start working towards your individual goals for your dog. So I think part of writing your way to the beginning is understanding where you're at when you sit down to write, or when you begin to train. It's like, where
Right.
am I at?
And you can start either way. So you can either start with like an idea of where you're starting and where you want to get to in the story or in the behavior. You can also just start with whatever's in front of you. So just a brain drain on the page, and maybe you'll get a good sentence out of it.
A lovely sentence, we hope.
Or reinforcing a dog for a behavior they offer naturally, and maybe we get some magic out of that.
Yeah, some shaping. So whether you're going to do a planned, okay, I have this planned schedule of where I want to get to, or you can take the approach of, let's do some shaping. Let's see what the dog can offer me that I can use to shape towards a behavior that's going to be good for both of us. So I always really admire people who are good. Robin Bennett's beautiful at shaping. She can just really shape a behavior. Um, not my I not my strongest skill, but
Oh, see, it is. I love doing shaping, free shaping. It's my favorite.
well, if I'm not going towards a particular goal, if I'm just willing to take a behavior and reinforce that behavior, if it's, I think it's cute or it's useful, whatever, that's one thing. But to take a behavior and shape it into something else, no, I'm not very good at that. I'm a lure and reward kind of gal. I like
Oh,
to lure
yeah.
a bit. I like to lure a little bit just to give an idea where we're headed, and then I'll switch over to reinforcement shaping. But
So
I'm a lurer.
that's really, really interesting. So I have long lived my life with dogs who don't lure very well, that luring doesn't really work for them. So like
So
you
you
try
need
to lure
retriever.
you try to lure a pot cake, they're like, why? Like they're just naturally skeptical. Terriers, I mean, most terriers try to lure a Yorkie, like, or a Shih Tzu. They're like, we don't care, right? So it is interesting to me. That's interesting because I start with free shaping. That's where I like always start. So
Yeah.
so let me talk about what that means because some of you may not know what free shaping is. So we were just doing it in puppy class. So the two puppies that were here were Trace and Henry. So shout out to their families if they're listening to the podcast. I hope they are. And both puppies are adolescents now, both still intact, of course. Well, not of course, but they're both still intact. And so both of them, now that their focal distance is longer, they're noticing more of the world. That's all that means. They sometimes don't always hear their names. So we got our clickers out, we counted out 10 treats. And when our puppy was looking away from us, we said puppy name and watched to see what part of the puppy moved first in the process of checking in with us. And so for one puppy, that was kind of, you could watch the tip of his nose because that kind of orients first. For the other puppy, it was turning his ear. So he would like flick his ear it's both boy puppies. So one kind of flicks his ear in the handler's direction. The other one moves the tip of his nose in the handler's direction, either whether left or right, it doesn't matter, but toward the handler. So that was initially what we clicked. which
Yep.
is just a secondary reinforcer. It's just saying to the puppy, what you did right there, that's what you're getting paid for. That started getting the puppies to follow through to get the cookie. So very quickly, we went from 2 puppies who 7 out of 10 times when you said their name, they checked in, to puppies who it was kind of hard to get them to look away in just a
Yeah.
couple of minutes. Right now,
Well, that's
it'll
interesting.
wear off.
Right. I do the same kind of thing. What I tell people is when we are talking, especially when we're playing the name game, when the dog is learning his name, if you see a reaction from the dog that tells you, I heard you, that's when you click. Because what we want to let the dog know is, I know that you heard me because you just told me that you did. And that's great. So you click, and then when you turn towards me, you get a treat. So yeah, I do that. I guess I never thought of that as free shaping, but I guess it is. I do that. So maybe I'm a better free shaper than I thought.
Probably.
Oh.
And really, the whole point of free shaping, and one of many reasons that I like it so much, is that the dog it's cooperative, right? It's not
Yes.
me, it's not, there's, for me anyway, there's less a chance that I'm going to get frustrated that my dog isn't doing the thing, right? Because if the thing is just turning and looking at me, well, they're going to do that, right? If they don't, I can just get a bag of potato chips. Then when I open that, they'll totally turn and look at me, right?
Oh yeah.
So
That crinkly bag thing, that is like the best recall sound on the planet. It's
yeah,
it's great.
yeah,
So no, I agree with you there. That's really fun. And I also find too with when I'm working especially with new owners and I've handed them a clicker and we're doing this, the first time it really works for them, you can just watch it click in their own brain. That's what's really fun for me is I'm like, you need to trust me on the process here. Look, I'm going to show
yeah,
you what I mean. And then you try it and they click and the dog goes, huh? And they're like, it works.
right. Well,
Yeah.
and then I'm often have, the people are like, well, it's just that click sound. I'm like, I love you. It's not. It could be a yay. It could be a finger snap. It could be the sound of a kazoo, a whistle. It
It
doesn't,
just has to be some sort of
something
a
that's
oral
relatively
marker.
novel. Right.
Yeah, a novel marker so that they understand this is something I should pay attention to. And because you then associate it with treats, then that noise itself becomes rewarding.
Yes. And
Because
I
and
will say,
that's the beauty of
and
it.
the other piece I would say is that it also becomes rewarding for the human brain.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Because
I
you're
think
getting
we get a little
reinforced.
dopamine off of it too.
That's right, because you're being reinforced because you're being successful with your dog.
Yes.
And so it just sort of opens up. The other thing is that I find and that I love about clicker training or positive reinforcement training is the creativity it then sparks. Because when you realize I can do something simple like that, then like, well, what can I do next? And for me, what I find is that it makes the owner so much more creative and engaged. And then it's like, really they begin to work with the dog. It's no longer me training the dog. It's what are we going to do next? And that's a very different attitude, which I
Well,
really like.
and I want a learner who loves the game,
Yes, both.
right?
I want the
Both
dog
for the
and the
human,
human.
exactly. That's why I said the learner, right?
That's right.
Because for some people, dog training is not their favorite thing.
Mm-mm.
There are other things that they love doing instead. So getting them a little bit of dopamine too is a big help.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So,
So but the one thing I would say in my defense of doing a little bit of luring is that sometimes I find in classes that the owner's just not getting it and they're starting to get frustrated. So one of the things if like I'm teaching a sit, I'll tell them, just put the treat at the nose because they want to push the bottom down, right? So I'll say, put the treat at the nose. Think of it as like a nose magnet and raise their head up and their bottom will go down. You click and you give them the treat. You do that. I don't let them do it over and over again. It's like, let's do that 2 or 3 times. Then take the treat out of your hand and just move your hand in that same motion above your dog's head, and you'll see him go into a sit. And then you can start making that motion a lot smaller until I can just flick my finger at Zuzu and she'll sit. But it started with a lure. So I kind of feel like I think free shaping is great. And I think there's some times when it's the best way to go. But I also know too that sometimes I need to give my owners success more quickly than perhaps shaping would give them. So it's another tool in my toolbox. It's not the exclusive tool that I use, but it's another tool that I use that is effective for some people to really get them engaged in training. So
Yeah, I mean, I do see lots of dogs who don't lure, which is interesting.
they don't what?
That don't lure. So we have
Yeah,
to, so you'll laugh. So all of my dogs now lure, but they lure because I did it through free shaping. I
yeah.
taught them to lure because people like to watch the lure, but my dogs don't really. I mean, the Doberman does it, but like the Jack
Yeah.
Russell's like, I don't care. Um, and the two
But the other
pocket
thing,
don't care.
the other thing I also like about luring is that I find luring to be really handy when I'm in a situation that might be a bit of an emergency. If I'm out on the trail with my dog and I see, another dog coming in my direction that I don't like, putting a fistful of treats in her nose and turning her towards me and backing up and luring her with the treats to a safe zone, I find to be really handy if I need to move quickly. So I also find it can be really handy that the dog knows how to lure, then I can move quickly out and move over to a safe space. And I've used that. I had one dog that was very reactive. One client's dog was really reactive to other dogs, and it was a big, big dog. I mean, this was a Pyrenees, and um, this was not a dog you could manhandle. It's huge. So we learned all kinds of things. We learned name game, we learned target, we learned backup, we learned oopsie. Oopsie meant we turn and we back up. But then as we would move into, if we see somebody coming and we knew that it was a trigger for this dog, so we would target or we'd oopsie and we'd back up and we'd move into, back away either down the sidewalk or into a driveway or something. But to keep the dog's attention, then we were doing feed, 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 and found that to be really handy. So you have a combination of a jackpot, a lure, some trained behaviors, all these things to keep the dog focused on the owner and happy about whoever it is that's passing by. So there's lots and lots of tools in your toolbox. And what I find is that sometimes one works and sometimes it doesn't. So it's nice to have more than one trick in my bag.
Okay, so we got letters. So for me, the letters of the alphabet are things like your name, can you look at me? Do you feel safe? Can you pee and poop? Can you sleep? Can you relax? Can you play? Right? So those are my letters to make up words. So and then but you so I think you also do all of those things. I just don't think you
Yes.
necessarily thought of it as training.
I think you're probably right.
Okay.
Yeah. I
So
think probably I've thought of those more as husbandry as opposed to training.
okay. So do you start with training or husbandry?
All of the above.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
kind of
so
feel like
I'm not a big one for starting with training. I start with cooperation. I don't
yeah,
really care if they sit down or stay or even walk nicely on a leash because I can handle um I can put a long line on a dog and click and reward them for checking in and staying close to me, and it eliminates the leash issue. Typically, now not a dog who's so shut down that they can't eat, right? And that does happen. Some dogs are just super stressed. But to try to train a dog, and I would say this, I love that we're talking about this because to try to start putting paragraphs together with a dog who is so worried or exhausted or in enough pain that they can't think isn't very, you're not going to get very far. It's going to be a poorly written paragraph. You're not really going to get that done.
right. Well, I think when I was thinking about what you said, and I think that what I always tell people is like when every time you interact with your dog, somebody's getting trained, somebody's learning something. It might as well be the dog. So in that sense, oh, in fact, one just opened the door and came in. Hi, Susie. Um, in that sense, I kind of feel like I view a lot of that husbandry stuff that we do is I would also, I guess, put under training. I don't know. It's like I feel like anytime I interact with my dog, I'm trying to communicate. I'm trying to, figure out what they want, figure out, let them know what I want. So I think all of these things come under the umbrella of training for me. But it's good that you're making me define these things. You should stop doing that, making me define things.
Oh,
But
yes, I apologize. So, yeah, I just think sometimes I know Colleen talks about lumping and lunging. I'm totally a lump and lunger too. Where you kind of go, okay, dog did it 3 times. They know it. Let's move on to the next thing. And that's probably not enough time, almost always. Because even a blind squirrel, I know if I've done
yeah.
something 3 times, I probably don't know it yet. I still reading the
Oh,
directions. So,
yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like I can't tell you, like people say, well, how many times do you edit? I'm like, I always edit. I am always editing. When I'm writing,
I'm editing.
I'm editing. I'm editing as I write. I don't write and then go back and edit. It's like I'm right and I think I'm like, no, I want to change it because anyway. So yeah, I agree. That's maybe why I see training and husbandry is this coexistent kind of thing
I would
because
agree.
you don't just write and then edit. It's I don't just do husbandry and train. It's all meshed together
Right,
in
it's
taking
living.
care of my dog. Yeah.
Right, right. So yeah, starting with kind of begin at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how often do you find with your dogs, like now your dogs are adults, your grandkids are getting older. Um, how often are you having to revisit behavior that for chapters that you thought were well written, but now the dogs are a little bit older, the kids are maybe the next youngest is coming up, but the oldest is getting older and moving into new territory for your dogs? How often do you have to rewrite the sentence, the paragraph, the chapter?
That's a really good question. And I'm not sure I have a clear answer for that. What I would say is that I feel like I'm always editing because it's very rare that my dogs are alone with any of my grandkids because
Oh,
of the
right.
fact, I mean, I was sitting here thinking today, like, I have the two little girls today. I have Eva, who's 4, and Lizzie, who's 3. And so, well, their mother's here too. So it's not like they're running wild while
Right.
I'm
We're
podcasting
recording a
everybody. Okay,
podcast and
grandpa's here and the older brother's here and the mother's here, but I had him for a while. And I took him outside to play on the swing and I didn't take a dog with me. And I didn't take a dog with me because one, Clementine would have been all the way to
New
Galena.
Jersey.
Yeah, New Jersey, because she's a wanderer. And I didn't take Zuzu because she would want to hang with me and she'd get hit in the head with the swing. We had one of these big saucer swings.
Right.
So, and I wasn't going to send them out there with Zuzu. So,
Right.
but on the other hand, we came in and they both wanted to take a dog for a walk. So I said, okay. So I got 2 leashes, clipped them both onto Clementine and sent them into the backyard with the little girls. And they walked around my garden, came back in, and that was it. I was watching from the window. But I also knew too that Clementine would be fine, that they would just go down the steps, walk around the yard, and then she would come in. And if I was watching so that I knew that, if anything went wrong. So then they wanted to lay down on the dog bed. And no dog was on the dog bed. I said, okay, they love this round donut, this big round donut one.
No, I know.
So they laid on the dog bed and I gave them a blanket. And the next thing I know, I look over there and Clementine has curled up with them. So the 3 of them are all curled up together in the dog bed. But once again, it was not without adult supervision. I wasn't going to just leave Clementine in the bed with 2 small little girls.
Right.
And
And you
so,
and I both, if Clemmy had been laying in the bed, as sweet as Clemmy is, if Clemmy had been laying in the bed asleep and the 2
no
girls
way,
wanted to go lay on her, we would have been like, absolutely not.
maybe
No.
not. But the fact that they were on the bed and she joined them, that
Right.
is a different scenario. And she was very happy to be there and she would lick their toes and they thought that was very funny. But when I let it go on for a little while and then I broke it up and said, let's go do a puzzle because I
Right.
didn't
Let's
want
go
to
do
push
something
it to the
else.
point. So that's one of the things that I do that I'm really I mean, I'm probably not the best dog owner in the planet, but the one thing I think I do really well is read when my dogs have had enough. Like Clement, like Zuzu right now has left all the grandchildren and has come in to settle on her bed next to me. And if a grandchild were to come in, I would say, that's fine. You can sit in the chair, leave Zuzu alone. Because she's made
Right.
it very clear.
She says she wants a break.
Right. Well, she's going to be 10 this summer. She just,
Right.
she plays with
Well,
them. She loves to play ball and stuff, but she's also getting more and more like, enough, enough of
yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And that's fine. She has the right to say that. When you're almost 10-year-old dog, you have the right to say, I've had enough of
So
three-year-old.
I wonder to the average parents if that idea sounds really foreign to them. I think sometimes it's a surprise to people when I say like, yeah, your dog will have times that they're done with whatever
Yeah.
weird human thing we're doing. And they're like, peace out. I'm gonna go do my own jam. Like I'm gonna go do my own thing. I think for a lot of people, they kind of expect the dog to have infinite tolerance and
Yes.
enjoyment of the humans, even the little humans or senior humans, doesn't really matter. Honestly, my dogs get annoyed with me
Yeah.
somewhat regularly because sometimes I want them to do things and they're like, we're tired, like, because I'm just getting home from work and it's 8:30. And the terrier thinks 8:30 is bedtime. Like he
Mm.
should not be bothered after 8:30. He's off duty. So, I want some cuddles and he's like, I'm ready for bed.
Yeah. Well, what I would say is my grandkids range in age. I have 9 of them from 2, yeah, no, Gregory is 2, Lizzie's 3, Eva's 4, to 15, 2 to 15. And the 2-year-old lives with the dog, Rosemary, the Aussie, and she's brilliant with these kids. Um, so my rules are different for the 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old. Those have, especially there's a big difference, by the way, between a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. I can reason a lot more with a 4-year-old and say, no, we're going to leave her alone. With 2-year-old, I distract the 2-year-old away from the dog rather than try and give them directions to leave the dog. But with like the 11-year-old boy who loves dogs, I do allow him, if we are out walking, he can walk Zuzu on a leash by himself when I'm there. I don't have a separate leash for me. The little girls, the little ones, I double leash so that I've got more control over the dog. They think they're walking the dog, but they have their own leash. And
So do you have
but
different leash lengths, one for you and one for them?
mhm, absolutely.
So
And then
so how do you set it up? Like draw the picture for people.
okay, well, what I do is like, for example, if um one of the kids wants to go, what I usually do is I have all kinds of leashes. So I let them go and pick out the color leash that they want. Okay. And then I know you don't like harnesses a lot, but I find harnesses really handy in this particular situation.
They probably are wonderful in this situation.
Yeah. So I have the clip, my leash, my leather leash is clipped to the front because I feel like I've got a little bit more control when I clip to the chest of the dog. And I clip the kid's leash to the hook on the back of the dog because one is less likely to get tangled in puppy dog feet. And
Yes.
two, it's easier for them on either side. And
Yes.
so I have more control over the pace and what's going on with the dog, but that looks like they're walking the dog because the leash is on top.
Yes.
And so if I have to do more than one kid, then each kid gets their own leash. And we know whose turn it is to walk because that's whose leash is clipped to the dog.
Perfect.
And
I
yeah,
think
so
that's a
that
wonderful way to explain it. So do you give the kids treats or like if you're teaching the behavior, or are you reinforcing the dog?
depends on the dog and it depends on what we're doing. There's a lot of situations where if we're out and Clemmy always takes it. One of the great things about Clementine is that she always takes a treat nicely, no matter what. She's just very, but Zuzu, if she gets excited, tends to get a little sharky. And
Yep.
so what With
I have
Zuzu,
one that when he gets nervous, he gets sharky.
yeah. And so in that case, if they want to give the dog a treat, we toss it on the ground.
Nice.
So they're not trying to hand it to her. Clemmy, you can just hand it. She'll just take it very nicely from your hand, no matter what. She's just very sweet. But Clementine is not the one that I let them walk as much because she's much more, she's, Clumbers, I think, have bloodhound in them in their past. And so she is so scent driven that she it's like she's working a police grid sometimes, you know. She does this grid thing. And so she becomes a lot, and the tail's always like going around like a helicopter. She's hysterical when but she's a little bit more erratic on leash because she's much more scent driven. So unless we're walking someplace really familiar, like the backyard or a neighborhood that she's familiar with,
Right.
she's not the one that I have them walk. Zuzu's much more reliable on a leash. Well, she's also older, and she's not as scent driven as Clementine. And she's also too, like as we mentioned in one of our most recent episodes, is I've got a couple places now where Zuzu just has learned, oh, the best thing in life is to trot along and take treats from mom. And so that's a great place to walk her with with the kids, because I know she's going to be very focused.
Nice.
If we're going someplace brand new, I generally don't let them walk them because the dogs are just too excited and likely to be frustrating for them to walk. And I don't want them to be frustrated when they're walking the dogs. The other thing that I have found too is that there are places where we can let the dogs off lead. And so I will take them with me when the dogs are off lead. And there are times when I will let them try and call the dog back and give him a treat and stuff like that. Generally when we're off lead though, um, that's it's a little bit more challenging because I have to focus on the dog and on the kid. And so I tend to do that with another adult so that we're too deep in adults. I don't generally take, unless it depends once again on the kid. Like this last weekend, two of my grandsons and I went out to our cottage for the weekend because one of them is homeschooled and one of them had a break from school, spring break. So I took the two of them out to cottage to go fishing and stuff. And at one point, Edward and I took Zuzu for a walk. And there was a point where Zuzu can be off lead, but then we get to a point where I know that there's a dead deer over there. So we're going on lead because I don't need dead deer smell in my house. Or we're going to move on to
Killjoy.
yeah. So, Edward was able to see how you can control a dog in different ways. That if we're walking along the private road and we're this part, she can be off lead. If she starts going off in a direction I don't like her to, he's learned her whistle. He can help me bring her back. So, I think it's really important for kids to begin to understand that dogs like them can utilize space in different ways and that they can have different levels of freedom depending on what they've earned and what the safety is in the area. So,
I love that.
yeah, so that was kind of fun.
So then I would say that the same thing happens when we're dealing with humans on the other end of the continuum. So senior citizens who are coming and visiting or staying, living with us, or elderly dogs, right? They're constantly changing and developing the same way the humans are all constantly changing and developing.
Yes.
And so, yeah, we're always editing. So my dogs basically do everything. Well, I'll give you an example. Buddy, this sweet dog that I'm driving up to my cousin to be her new dog on Friday, is lovely. Uh, Christopher and I are old, middle-aged. I'm going to choose to view it as middle-aged. Um, our house is basically designed to allow dogs a lot of freedom and to be successful. We have a fenced yard, and Buddy is fantastic. Like effortlessly folded into the house, like is good with all the other dogs, is good with the kitty. He's wonderful. He's a really, really nice dog. But the couple he's going to live with are newlyweds. So there will still be things for Buddy to learn,
Yes,
right? Because
absolutely.
I'm pretty sure we're gonna start a family. So Christopher and I are not at that stage of the game. So my dogs aren't really trained for that. But Buddy will be. And so this will be part of what they will get to work on with him. I don't see anything that would be problematic. Like he doesn't really, he's social, but not obnoxious about it. Um, he has some manner things that they'll need to work on a little bit. And I thought about working on those things before he went to them and decided that instead, my cousin is actually a pretty good dog trainer in her own right. I have many times tried to get her to move to Georgia so I can hire her. And she just won't because there's this guy she loves who lives in New York. So, how rude. Anyway,
I know.
so
That's what I'm saying. It's like, what is her
really,
problem, man? I
really,
mean,
okay.
seriously,
So,
you're gonna choose love and a family over training with your cousin? It's like, what is
sheesh,
her problem?
right?
Ugh, some people.
Some people. So, I'll get her to visit, but it's the same thing. I thought about like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I could do this and this. And then I was like, you know what? This is part of the bonding and the joy that they will have getting to know him and that he will have getting to know them. And if they ask for help, that's different. I'm just gonna let them do it their own way. Because again, their family's pretty good with dogs. So uh it's interesting though. It was really gratifying to see how quickly all of my dogs adjusted to having this dog with zero reactivity being added to the ranks. That they were like, oh, he's our friend. Like there were some limits set, like Marco had to be like, don't come near me because I'm Marco and I like 5 times the space that any reasonable dog wants. Um, yeah,
Yep,
he just has a big personal bubble. So he's kind of a brat, if I was to be honest, but I love him. And so he's my brat. So
that's right.
I'm allowed to call him a brat. No one else really can. So, but even he adjusted pretty well, which is a testimony to what a nice dog Buddy
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
That he's like getting yelled at by the rude dog. And he's like, all right, well, I guess we'll be friends. I'll try again tomorrow. Right.
yeah.
He just
It's,
was
it's
not
funny. My
plussed by it.
my trainer got a new puppy, a little golden retriever puppy named Oliver. And oh my heavens, it is the cutest thing on the planet, and I desperately want one. But he's great. He's just like, okay. Their other dog was kind of cranky at first. I was like, okay, fine. You can be cranky. I'm still gonna be a friend. And now Dexter loves Oliver and they play. And he's almost to the point of letting Oliver sleep on top of him. Not quite. We're not quite there, but we're getting there. And Oliver comes into the gym and he walks and he says hi to everybody. And, he's not scared of any of the equipment. And, he would just as soon sit out at the front desk and greet everybody. Just an incredible puppy. It's been a long time since I've seen a puppy that was just, I don't know, I guess so perfect, it seems, in so many ways. So he
Yeah. I
gets
mean,
his zoomies and he gets crazy and he's not wild about his crate yet. But it's just there's such a joy to working with a dog like Buddy or like Oliver, who is just there's a certain I'm just so joyful to be who I am, and I'm just, everything's fine and everyone's fine and life is fine, and that's really nice.
yeah, I
That's
used
really
to
nice
say
to have.
Stuart kind of walked around going, I'm awesome. And now that I said hello to you, you're a little more awesome too. Right. That's
That's it.
kind of I kind of like those plucky dogs that are like,
Yeah.
I'm great. I don't know how you are. Like you might be purple because I'm not doing anything you asked me to do, but I actually think those dogs are kind of fun. Um,
Yeah.
within
Oh,
reason.
Oliver is just, you would adore him. He's just like the nicest golden retriever crazy puppy on the planet.
We have some fascinating ones in class at the moment.
Right.
So that they're really funny, right? And
Yeah.
and there's something about that golden puppy boy.
Oh,
That brain is like the doofus brain.
oh, it
They're like
totally. Right.
doink. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing with Goldens is that most people don't realize is that they can be real source garters, and that's something you had
Oh,
to be.
no, I
You
mean,
had to,
I think I've told the story on the podcast before that the single most dangerous dog I ever worked with was a golden,
yeah.
and
So I
he
mean,
was
that's one of
terrifying.
yeah. So that's one of the things that I was working with them a little bit, saying, hey, what you might want to do is, like when he brings you stuff, trade him. If you want to get the stick away from him, trade with him. Trading, I think, is really important with these dogs. And he said, well, he's going to bring me stuff all the time. I'm like, yeah, and that's
Yes, he
great.
is. He's gonna do that anyway. He's a golden retriever.
That's right. So far better he brings you the stick and you give him a treat for it than he chews the stick and we're at the emergency vets.
Well,
Or
and
or that you grab the stick so that the next time he does chew it up or he won't give it up or it's just that's just with Goldens especially I am really big about trading like from day one.
yeah, I see lots and lots of resource guarding. Now I do occasionally get the golden retriever who didn't read the job description, but
Right.
it's relatively rare. Like the
Yeah.
golden
And
retriever who's like a nervous wreck and doesn't like tennis balls. And I'm like, really? Or is poultry intolerant. I'm like, you're a bird dog, but they sometimes don't read the manual. All right,
yeah,
so when do you think is appropriate for the average family to get a copy editor, a developmental editor?
a developmental editor.
That's what I'm going to start changing my instead of training director, I'm going to be developmental
Developmental
editor.
editor. I think well, copy editor comes after developmental editor, by the way.
Ah,
Um, So I think sometimes a developmental editor is really important. One, um, I think what you need, if you've never had a dog and you don't know what you're doing, you need a writing coach first. You need somebody to help you figure out how to structure a novel. There are certain parts to a novel that have to be there. How do I structure this? How do I achieve what I want to achieve in the novel? How do I write a plot? How do I develop characters? And I think that's sort of puppy class and maybe some beginning classes is your writing coaches helping you to define the nature of the book and giving you the instructions about how to write a book. Developmental editor, I think, comes in when you come to one of 2 points. Either you've come to the point where you've had a problem you don't know how to solve. Like if you have a dog who's a resource guarder, or you have a dog who is fearful, or you have a dog who is aggressive, or you have a dog who's starting to show signs that make you uncomfortable, that's when you need a developmental editor to come in and help you change the story. To take it, like I always say, my developmental editor took my first book from a manuscript to a novel. And so I kind of feel like a developmental editor in dog world would be one who takes, you've got a basic story. We want to turn this into a novel. We want a happy ending to this book. So you need a developmental editor to really help you shape your program and help shape your dog and help you in case there is a real serious problem. And then the copy editor at the end, that's just, that's the trimming on the top. Or the other time I think you need a developmental editor is when you want to do something specific with your dog. So say you've gone through all your basic training and your dog's really good and you go, "Oh, I would really like to do scent work, or I would like to do agility, or I would like to do I'd like to, I don't know, be a
fast
therapy
cat.
dog."
Right.
Right. That's where a developmental editor can help you bring that basic story. Okay, it's a basic story. Did you want to write a really great mystery? We need to add these elements. The same kind of thing. You've got a great dog, you want a therapy dog, we need to add these elements to it. You
Right.
want to do
Or we're starting a family, or grandma or
right.
grandpa's moving in, or we're moving from the country to the city, or vice versa.
That's right. That's where you
Or
need somebody who can really that's where I see you moving maybe away from group training to individual training, where you have that developmental editor or that trainer that comes in and helps you with your specific situation so that you and the dog end up being successful and you've written a successful novel. Does that make
so do you,
sense?
so do you think, yes, it does. So do you think your novel, the first one, is better for paying all these editors?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. My first novel would not have existed without my first writing course with Brad Paquette in Columbus Writing Lab. I took a course from him on how to write a novel. I like, okay, great. And he just gave me this, this format that really works. So without him and his initial editing, I wouldn't have known where to go with the book. And then the developmental editor really helped me shape it. I gave her a book that was, I think it was 102,000 words. We brought it down to 70. So, or maybe a little bit less, more like 65,000. And and I didn't know where to cut anymore. I didn't know. She helped me decide, yeah, this is a great character development, not necessary, because she's an ancillary character. So, or this chapter is really fun, but we've got too many characters. This needs to go. Take this little element here and put it over here. And so, yes, my novel would not be the novel it is without all of that help. And it's just, it's you have to be willing to be cooperative because, and
You have to have a willing spirit.
yes, and or without my two writing partners, Laura and Brian, it would not have been a novel. And they were really instrumental in helping me to shape it. But the editing itself, the developmental editor, Heather, took my manuscript and turned it into a novel. That's really what happened. Basically, she went through and she said, do all this. And then I took 6 months and did all of that. I did probably 98% of what she asked me to do. And there was one chapter we still disagreed on. And I said, I'm leaving the chapter in because I'll take that one out. But this one, I like this one too much. It has to stay. So that's the only time I stood up to her. Otherwise, I'm like, okay, whatever you say, Heather.
Well, and I will say, like, I kind of dig it when someone asks for my support and help, but I want them to know, like, the dog isn't living with me. The dog's living with them.
Right,
Right.
right.
So, I sometimes get the question like, oh, is the dog allowed on the bed? I'm like, that's up to you.
Yeah,
Right. Some of my dogs are allowed on the bed. Some of my dogs are not allowed on the bed.
right, right. It's the same kind of thing with a novel. Heather didn't actually write anything. She went through and went, move this here. This needs to go. I want you to rewrite this. She didn't write a word. I did all the rewriting. She just gave me the direction that she thought it should go in order to become a more cohesive work. And it's the same thing with training. I'm not here to tell you exactly what's right for your family. I'm here to help you figure that out.
Right. So it's funny because people will come into class and I'm like, great, what do you want to work on today? And they're like, and I'm like, class isn't for me. My dog isn't even here. Class is for you, right? So what do you want support with? And apparently that's an odd question from a dog trainer because
Yeah.
a lot of people in a group class expect that I'm going to be the boss of them all the time, and I'm not. So today we kind of went down a list of what targeted skills we have for our adolescent class with the two puppies that were here. We discussed like how close are you to feeling like if we did an assessment on those skills that you think your dog would pass with flying colors. Great. Where do you think things are still a little bit wobbly? And then we worked on those two wobbly skills while they were here. They'll work on them, through next week. And then they'll both pass assessments, I would assume, next week. So there's a little bit of creative editing.
Yes, absolutely. I remember when I sometimes feel like I could uh, teach my beginning classes in my sleep, because there's certain things you go through and you teach but
Christopher will tell you I do
yeah,
because I talk in my sleep. And so
yeah,
he'll be like, your 2 a.m. Tuesday class, here were
yes,
the names of the people and the dogs, and this is what you worked on today.
yes. Well, but I enjoyed beginning classes, don't get me wrong. But really in some ways relished my intermediate and my more advanced classes because we could get so creative. And I would do things and set up mazes with cones, and all the cones were numbered. And then I'd say, okay, you're going to start at cone number 12 and you're going to start at cone number 1. And you're going to work your way. You're going to go backwards and you're going to go forwards. And at some point, you two are going to meet. How are you going to handle that with your dogs? And by the way, I'm only going to give you 3 treats to get through the maze. So, I mean, that wasn't the very first day of class, but they could rise to the challenge and say, okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to stand in the middle of the maze and I smell like chicken. How are you going to get around me? Or I'm going to be here with Zuzu and what are you going to do? And those challenges, I just had so much fun with sort of like, okay, we want to work on working around other dogs and moving and staying with me and focusing on you and what happens if you're getting low on treats? Well, let's practice being low on treats. And I found those kinds of things to be really, really fun because everybody got creative. And and if somebody got the zoomies, well, it just didn't matter. We would laugh and we'd set the cones back up again in a different way. And so I always enjoy working with dogs that have I guess I really liked being the developmental editor. You know, I really liked working with um, dogs that had a certain set of skills and how are we going to hone those to really be what you want them to be. And those were always really fun. That's
I
really fun.
love that.
So, okay. So I think we
I think we did a good job talking about it.
I think we might have exhausted our metaphor. Um
Oh, I doubt that. Surely we could beat that horse. But I just wouldn't. So, because I'm a Lima trainer. So, I do think I will say this. Sometimes behaviors that families at first think that they want to leave on the editing room floor, a good dog trainer can dust off and really make something magnificent out of that for the dog and the family. Because sometimes that is the magic. So the golden retriever puppy who's always bringing you something, that can be shaped into some amazing stuff, right? Or the dog who likes to dig holes can learn to do their own toenails. And sometimes we're going to think out of the box in a way that's a little bit different than the average family who's just trying to, survive Wednesday.
yeah. And that's not to say there aren't times when you and I are just trying to survive Wednesday.
Oh, I mean, yeah,
but
that happens too.
yes, that does happen too. But yeah, but I think that and I think it also comes from the fact that I was before I retired from training, I trained for you've trained longer than I have, but it was about 20 years. And I figured out the number of dogs. I mean, part of it is I learned so much over the years from all the plethora of dogs who came through my life. I learned where I made mistakes early on and wished I could go back and correct them. That I had done some things that's like I did the best I could at the time, but when I learned more, I'm like, man,
Like
I wish I could go
parenting,
back. Yeah, I
right?
wish I
Like
could.
I don't know about I think most honest people will say that there were things that they did while parenting that they wish they had done differently. Doesn't
Oh yeah,
necessarily mean that what they did was awful, because it probably wasn't. But we do think
but
in terms of like, wow, I could screw that up better next time. And so we're always trying to screw it up a little bit better. And I'm definitely in that same thought process with my dogs.
yeah. So I kind of feel like when people are like, wow, that's really cool. How'd you think of that? Well, it's like I didn't think of it on day one as a trainer. You're talking to me, like year 16 as a trainer. I know a little bit more, seen a few more dogs, and I'm also be willing. I found I was just willing to be a little bit maybe softer, for a better term. It's like a little more willing to say, it's not going to be the end of the world if we don't, if you click a little late, it's okay. An ill-timed treat is just not going to destroy your dog. And just things that I would do a little bit differently. But I also think too that part of that creativity comes from being exposed to so many dogs under so many situations, both private and group lessons.
Great.
And going to seminars and working
And
dogs at
personal
seminars.
dogs.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I have had some fascinating ones. And I also have some dogs from my youth that I think about, like they really got uh they got a much less skilled handler and owner and partner than they would have now. So I would
Yeah.
say that there is, for me anyway, always a little bit of grief associated
Yes.
with getting better at, I mean, it's why I call it a practice, my practice.
Yeah.
Because like yoga, I can always, or Tai Chi, I can always get better at it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. I can
yeah,
always,
it's that as you gain more skill, you have to get different copy editors, and that can get
that's right.
that
That's
can
right.
be difficult. Well,
Yeah.
thank
And
you so much for this chat. I think this was a
yeah,
wonderful way to maybe give families a way to think about, okay, these are the words or letters we're starting with, but maybe we need some other words or letters or sentences or paragraphs or chapters.
that's right. So, and it can always be edited. Trust me. I know because I've got my red pen right here, ready to attack the very first page of my novel now has like is all red. So I'm like, okay, I think I have to reprint a new first page because I just
Right. So it's like work back to the beginning.
yeah,
And again, I think even with our dogs or with our kids, we can think like, man, I rocked that out. We did great. Like my dog has got this skill or my child has got this skill. They're doing phenomenal. They're great. And then something happens that we go,
oh,
oh,
okay.
we have to begin again. And
Yeah,
and for me, maybe because I am older and realize that kids, dogs are more resilient typically than we give them credit for, that not that I'm going to be cavalier about it, but that things are going to happen that we're going to adjust and change later and it'll be okay. I
yeah,
don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect. My sweet dog does not have to be perfect. We endeavor to be cooperative with one another.
yes, yes. My dogs are what I call good enough.
Yeah.
They're
And
good enough for me. So
and person listening to this, you're good enough too, right?
yeah,
Like your dog's good enough, your kids are good enough, you're good enough. It's all good enough. And sometimes that's all you need is good enough. There are
right.
times that paper plates or ice cream for dinner or scrambled eggs for dinner is a perfectly good
Pancakes.
enough answer,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Like it, and sometimes it's fun. Honestly, some of my best memories are of being a kid and the days that my parents said we're going to what was called the Dairy Barn, um, in upstate New York in Big Flats, and that we were having ice cream for dinner.
Yeah. Hey,
Those were some of the best family dinners I remember in my
that's
youth.
right. And you're still alive today, so it
I
didn't
mean,
kill
we
you.
were allowed to be sticky, it was
Hmm.
fine, right? And really, very few people are unhappy. I mean, maybe if you're lactose intolerant, but
But yeah,
I don't remember a whole lot of family squabbles that happened while we were out having ice
that's
cream for
right.
dinner.
That's right. Okay. Well, thanks so much for the talk today. It was fun. It was a little bit different than what we usually do. And I think it gives, I like to come at things with a different perspective because you can talk about something one way and it doesn't resonate. But when you say it in a slightly different way, maybe that's how somebody's going to get it. So I think we're always striving to be consistent in what we say, but be creative in the way we say it so that we can perhaps reach you in a way that we hadn't been able to before. So thank
Well,
you so much.
and think about if your family is like, hey, we need to edit this, right?
Yeah.
It may be time for
Yeah.
the family to sit down and go, okay, what do we want our book to look like?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like, what should it look like? Well, please give us a like and a follow, review us. If you're on Apple, please give us a 5-star review. You can always email us at yourfamilydogpodcast@gmail.com. You can share on social media. You can like us. All of those things make us super happy. We also always want your feedback. We want to know what you want us to talk to you about here around the kitchen
Yes.
table, and what would be helpful to you, what your favorite topics are that we chat about, or if you know someone who you really think we should shine a spotlight on. So, you have a favorite author who wrote a book about, I don't know, grief of losing a pet, and you used that with your kids and you think it's phenomenal and you think we should interview that author, like, zip me their contact information and we'll get right on it, because
That sounds great.
we want to talk about what you want to talk about.
That's right. Okay, then. Well, thanks for joining us on Your Family Dog, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to Your Family Dog. Got questions? Interesting ideas? Visit www.yourfamilydogpodcast.com to share your thoughts.